think most people are cool with a good video game remake. Generally, it's a way for a newer generation to experience an older classic, a product of technology progressing and allowing a better experience overall, like with Resident Evil Remake. Other times, a shameless cash grab of those nostalgia bucks. Did we need The Last of Us Part 1 after getting a remaster a few years prior? Probably not, but at least it's virtually the same. Then, we've got the third type of remake, the bad one. It's something a bit rarer, but when it sucks, everyone knows. It can be as simple as a terrible port job years down the line, a sloppy job done by a different studio, something totally ruined by modern video game monetization, or just a failed attempt at a reimagination. Typically, a remake is meant to give old and new fans something cool in the middle ground. Most recently, Super Mario RPG, Resident Evil 4, and Star Ocean Second Story R knocked it out of the park. Then, you got whatever Warcraft 3 Reforged was trying to do. Do you want to play the 1.5 gigabyte original? Nope, you're playing the 30 gig remake that was released in a terrible state. Blizzard really went,
"Time is money, friend."
Then proceeded to remake every WoW expansion from vanilla to now Cataclysm. Who wanted Cataclysm? That's why I quit. Oh, so yeah, we'll be talking about terrible remasters and ports too. Have you ever played Sonic 1 on the Game Boy Advance? 15 years of ports and knowledge being turned into this was truly something special. So yo, it's Austin, and today we're gonna be making ourselves sad as we talk about decades of bad video game remakes. What's the first time y'all remember seeing a video game existing as a remake? For me, it was probably Mario 2 with the Mario All-Stars collection, and that was like, wow. It looks like the thing I played, but better. I was a really smart 4-year-old. Remakes seem to be all over the game industry at this point. You have companies like Capcom and Square Enix pulling the Disney and just remaking everything that they can possibly think of, and then others who are like, old games? What's that? It's all in the name of games preservation, as long as it's not a terrible hack job, which is unfortunately what most of today's video is about, so brace yourself. But before we get started, I got something cool to show y'all. Today's video has been sponsored by Backbone. You see this right here? This thing's the Backbone One, and it's a little device that clips onto your phone to create a next-gen gaming device. But it's not just mobile games. This thing can connect to your PC via Steam Link, your PlayStation 4 or 5 with Remote Play, or even your Xbox with the Game Pass games, so you can play any of your devices from home on the go. And it works really well. The Backbone One comes neatly packed in a little box, and you see this? This thing's really stretchy, so it'll fit phones of all kinds of sizes. From here, you just snap it in, launch the Backbone app, and you can play anything on your phone or connect to any of your consoles from anywhere. You don't even need to be on the same Wi-Fi. If you're out and about and you want to do a little bit of swinging around New York City, just whip out the Backbone One and get going. All of this is experienced through the sleek Backbone app, which has a nice console-style UI that allows you to navigate all the games on your phone and cloud gaming apps in one place. All you gotta do is press the orange button on the controller and select a game. I personally just like the idea of grinding out games from the comfort of my own bed. Look, y'all know I do a lot of these 100% videos, and I'm gonna do it in the most comfortable way possible. This thing's easy to use, it's really convenient, and frankly, I just like the way it feels. So if you want to pick up the Backbone for yourself or somebody else, head over to playbackbone.com or click the link down in the description below. I will literally be using this thing all the time for my channel, and I think it's the perfect gift for anyone this holiday season. Click the link in the description now. Thanks to Backbone for the sponsor, but for now we need to talk about the bad old new. Or a bad new old video game remakes that didn't do too good. So why don't we get this started with titles that, in my opinion, didn't receive enough care. For example, why did 13 Remake happen? You might not know 13, and that's okay. It's a game that was shrugged off by the gaming audience, got mixed reviews, and was very unlike most things you'd see in this era. When it originally came out in 2003, it was buried by a ton of real heavy hitters on the exact same day. How are you supposed to stand out when you're released at the same time as KOTOR, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, Final Fantasy X-2, Manhunt 2, and a ridiculous amount of others? The answer is, you don't. So you instead amass a cult following over the course of several years. 13 is a super interesting first-person shooter by Ubisoft that I never had a chance to play until recently. The story follows a guy with amnesia who's gradually unlocking memories and his identity, so the narrative is all over the place. That said, it's one of the coolest games from this time. It's got that heavy cel-shaded style that you'd also see in Jet Set Radio. It uses comic sound effects to show you movement and stealth sections. Anytime you shoot at somebody in a cinematic way, panels pop up, and frankly, I kinda love it. It
It's bizarre, it's got David Duchovny and Adam West, it's a classic. So, the remake. It's not often that a game's publisher comes out and apologizes for its issues at launch, but 13 Remake sure deserved it. Weirdly, this had absolutely nothing to do with Ubisoft and was instead developed by Playmagic, who don't have any credits prior to this. Unfortunately, the original 13 source code was lost, which was normal for the 2000s, so the team went and remade the entire game from scratch. I guess I didn't realize that also meant changing the most objectively interesting thing about this game and ruining the art style, which is also the least of its issues. 13 Remake is a technical disaster. It was plagued with issues at launch, and all it really did was cause the original to have a spike in sales. Putting these side by side, it's evident that the remake fails to meet player expectations, and all of the reviews from the time reflect that. Apparently, short after release, a bunch of ex-staff went shooting on the company, stating poor management, low morale, the whole shebang. At the very least, as of 2022, Microids went and hired another developer, Tower 5, to make a proper patch for 13 to fix it, but still a bad remake of a game that I think deserves way better. So yeah, there's technically a remake. It's fine, I guess, but even this remake still starts with the guy watching the original opening cutscene on a projector. Is this a YouTube rip?
Gentlemen, we're ready to launch operations.
Speaking of remakes, that'll eventually get more remakes. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD. Probably one of the only times I got grifted by my own nostalgia into thinking something was good. Pro Skater HD came out in a bit of a Tony Hawk drought. It had been 5 years since Proving Ground, and the only thing Activision and Robomoto were putting out were Ride and Shred. So of course, when they announced a return to form as an HD collection of 1 and 2, any Tony Hawk fan would get excited. I played it, I loved it, I bought it on another platform and continued playing the crap out of it, but it wasn't until I got my hands on Pro Skater 1 and 2 a few years later that I realized just how off everything is. Sure, it's got a decent selection of levels and skaters, a good amount of songs come back, as well as some not as good tracks. It just also messed up all the physics, it has a distinct lack of features, and ridiculous collision detection. I am the wall ride king, but in HD here, the game keeps telling me, no, you're grinding now. And I don't have this issue anywhere else. Even though this was a digital-only release, you can tell Pro Skater HD was just another Activision cash grab, and a stinky remake.
Tony Hawk was something that I was really looking forward to at the time, and thankfully Vicarious Vision's attempt was really good, but rest in peace. What about something that's only had one shot, one opportunity? Made in Unity, the Panzer Dragoon remake.
Man, Panzer Dragoon deserves better, but it's never gonna happen. Sega's got a lot of really cool franchises they don't do much with these days, especially from the Sega Saturn era. If you've never played a Panzer Dragoon before, you're missing out. Imagine Star Fox, but with cool people riding dragoons and gooning about with firebolts and lock-on lasers. Between 1995 and 2002, Sega released 4 main games in the series, one of which being an RPG, and you could tell that they were putting a lot of effort into it. They looked beautiful, had cool mechanics, and a soundtrack way beyond what you would expect from the 32-bit era. Despite each game receiving 9s across the board and being a flagship from Sega in this time, every single one of these is a commercial bomb. When it comes to rare and expensive games, Panzer Dragoon Saga has been in that conversation, as Panzer Dragoon is a doomed franchise, and then for 15 years we were all goonless. That is, until Megapixel Studio decided to do a remake. Panzer Dragoon Remake originally announced for the Switch, meaning yes, we've got frame rate issues. I'm playing it on the PC though, since this apparently drops to $2.49 on sale all of the time. Panzer Dragoon Remake is sterile. It's not a terrible remake by any means, but it does have a very high Nintendo hire this man energy to it. Everything does look more visually impressive than the Sega Saturn original, I would hope, but it also looks too clean because of it. The 360-degree shooting works well, but I'm not really sure why they have your aiming reticle cover your dragon when it didn't in the original. Visually, that game looked ridiculous for the time, and the remake being a Switch exclusive in origin means it's gonna be limited to modern standards. Certain stages like the desert are just obvious endless flat textures in the background and somehow feel less spectacular than the Sega Saturn release. The visual style looks like a mishmash of crazy character and enemy models on top of generic backgrounds. There's also like an orange filter over everything. The side-by-side comparison of the two really shows how different it is. Also, what's with the dragon? He flaps wildly around the screen, so sometimes I can't dodge things properly because I don't know where I am. I don't think it's bad by any means, but the 1995 classic deserves better. Now, take everything I just said and apply it to House of the Dead Remake, another Sega Saturn and arcade classic made in Unity, baby. House of the Dead Remake is a relatively faithful version of House of the Dead, one that had to be built from scratch considering Sega said LOL to the source code. Again, not terrible, just a little cheap. There's a few weird visual choices, and obviously light guns aren't really a thing anymore, so click away at the screen, I guess. I think they should have leaned more into a grimy overkill style than what they did here, but I can't hate on something that keeps the terrible, amazing voice acting from the 90s. I can hate this price though. $25 for a game that you can beat in half an hour. I don't know about that, Chief. If it had come with the sequel as well, then I'd be all in, because it ain't House of the Dead without Goldman.
I have made a creature to rule over mankind.
Last up on the Not Enough Care train is the series with the angriest of fandoms, Pokemon. The irony does not escape me. Pokemon is a series with a lot of remakes. Every few years, they go back and remake a previous generation to appeal to that subsection of nostalgia nerds. To this day, Heart Gold, Soul Silver is my jam, but I refuse to pay these kinds of prices for a physical copy. You jokers.
You can't stand me.
Ruby and Sapphire remake might have gotten slammed for having too much water or whatever, but I don't think I've seen anything go in one ear and out the other quite like Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. They're one of the only Pokemon games out there with a middling review score, and one of the only ones I've seen drop to half off on sale within a few months. I didn't play much of it myself because I've only got so much mental space for Pokemon these days, but it seems like there's a whole lot of people feeling underwhelmed. I thought the style they were going for was kind of cute, but in comparison to other remakes they've done, it seems to be regarded as sauceless. It's plain wet spaghetti. It's basically the same game with minimum changes, but on one screen now. When Gold and Silver were brought to the DS, they made them feel like the DS games, and because of that, they're some of the best. I think people were expecting Diamond and Pearl here to look like Sword and Shield, and were let down. Plus, there's no content from Platinum, which is the way to play that gen. However, no amount of people complaining about Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes on the internet was gonna stop it from selling 15 million copies, so what can you do? Besides go back to praying for a Digimon World remake. Why? Because I love pain.
Run away again, buddy, and you're totally grounded.
Pokemon Diamond and Pearl may not have true classic status, and well, neither does Digimon, but there are several old classics that have gotten remakes over the last 5,000 years or whatever. I mean, we've been seeing remakes of things since the 80s. If you were a video game franchise that was mildly popular before the year 2000, there's a very high probability that you've had a remake. How many times are we gonna see Final Fantasy I get a remake? The world may never know. But at least all of those remakes are fine. They didn't have to play Frogger for the PlayStation 1.
Why did the frog cross the road? He didn't.
I don't know about this Frogger guy. He keeps popping up lately. Konami's classic arcade cab from the 80s was one of the best-selling arcade cabinets of all time, and if you ever went into a Pizza Hut back when they were hut-shaped, you probably played one. The original Frogger was ported to just about every platform you can imagine, including the Game.com, but we're talking about the remake for the PlayStation 1. I used to like this game, like a lot. In the early 90s, when the mascot wars were back in full swing, Hasbro wanted to bring this little guy back, but with a sense of attitude. Not quite giving him a cigar and an ear-piercing tear, but you knew this frog was gonna cross this road, and he didn't give a f about cars. They just also made one of the most middling games of all time. Hasbro's Frogger took the original concept and expanded on it. It wasn't just the road, now Frogger needed to navigate through gardens, forests, heavy machinery, dark sewers, dark caves, and lava-filled caverns. It's also really difficult, the controls are pretty janky, and the music sounds like you're stuck at a Spin Doctors concert. But hey, despite the mixed reviews in game being not very good, it somehow managed to sell over 6 million copies, which is triple that of Bloodborne. I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry. I'm also sorry that Blaster Master Overdrive is a thing. Y'all know Blaster Master? Sunsoft's NES running gun and tanker is one of the most highly regarded 8-bit titles, and it's gotten its fair share of remakes and reboots over time. These days it's being handled by Inti Creates with the good old Blaster Master Zero trilogy, but in 2010, Sunsoft would remake the original for WiiWare, and they sure did the bare minimum. The reception was incredibly mixed, with some people saying the change in graphics makes it lose all of the 8-bit charm, and I I'm inclined to agree. Another big issue was the whole Wiimote thing, because this game forces you to hold a button down to strafe and shoot, and this controller's not made for human hands. Blaster Master's environments are really samey, which makes sense on the NES. It's a lot less forgiving when you're talking about the Wii, and due to them expanding the levels to be larger with more exploration, a whole bunch of overdrive feels incredibly samey. That sameness and controller clunkiness takes away from what could have been a shining remake, because it's really good in other ways. Although, one look at some of the other WiiWare redos, like Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth, and suddenly it is less impressive. We've already talked about TMNT Reshelled in another video that you can watch here, so I won't gab on about that again, but that's gotta be one of the most disappointing remakes for me. I don't know how you take an 11 out of 10 beat 'em up and turn it into a soulless cash grab, but at the very least, Shredder's Revenge exists, so I can play a decent Turtles beat 'em up this century. Next up, an obscure strategy RPG series from Japan that maybe 10 people watching have played, Langrisser. Also known to Westerners as a war song, this strategy RPG franchise has next to no presence in the West beyond the original and a mobile game. It's like your Shining Forces or Fire Emblems, except with more of a fantasy German setting. It's also got amazing character design by one Satoshi Urushihara, who you might recognize from a wide variety of things, some good, some unmentionable, but it has this standout look. Maybe I just like shoulder pauldrons 10 times larger than they need to be, but I've always loved the look of this series. Unfortunately, since we were stuck with the Americanized version with its generic art cover, I wasn't aware that this character's name was Ledin, not Garrett, and that this was the first in a series with several games and spin-offs. So when Langrisser 1 and 2 Remake were announced, I got excited, only to realize that I'd be eating the great value version of Langrisser. This strategy RPG was sped up and enhanced in a way that made sense with modern standards. It's just that by doing this collection, they homogenized two very different experiences into one that looks and feels identical the entire way through. There's a new art style that feels more soft in 2020s, but that just takes away even more of the identity. Again, this collection's not bad, and it is the only way for Westerners to properly experience the stories of two pretty decent fantasy strategy RPGs. But even people on the fan subreddit seem to recommend finding fan translations for earlier ports than this. At the very least, you can switch the character portraits over to the originals. Just do me a favor and don't look up the artist. But do look up Sega Ages. If you've never heard of it, well, we got a lot of ground to cover. And when it came to classics getting remakes, no one did it quite like Sega. Sega Ages is more of a concept. It's a label they sling around every now and then when they want to port or remake one of their older titles. Most recently, they used it for releasing enhanced versions of old Genesis and arcade games on the Switch, like Space Harrier and Phantasy Star. You could take that all the way back to the Sega Saturn too, when they were releasing classics like Space Harrier and Phantasy Star as separate games. Crazy, I know. Only one of those Saturn compilations made it stateside, and this cover has got to be one of the worst things I've ever seen. But this is about the PlayStation 2 era. Sega Ages 2500. Releasing for 2,500 yen each, that's about $18 in 2023 bucks, the 2500 series came around from Sega wanting to cosplay as D3 Publishers' Simple Series line. But instead of just porting an old ROM onto a full DVD, this time Sega would be totally remaking these older games into 3D, and the results aren't great. You might have actually played some of these as part of the Sega Classics collection. Turns out Sega wasn't allowed to release these games one at a time in America because Sony said so, and 9 of these were mashed onto one disc. Too bad there's 33 of them. Unfortunately, we didn't get the Phantasy Star 1 and 2 remakes here, the only time that's ever happened, and I think about this all the time, but we did get Outrun. This came out after Outrun 2, so yeah, a little less impressive right away. The quality is a mixed bag for sure. You've got decent remakes of Fantasy Zone and Game Ground, while others like Monaco GP are pointless and worse than the originals. Also, there's a Fist of the North Star game here. What? The biggest, stinkiest offender, however, has to be Golden Axe. Oh my god, what did they do to you? Golden Axe doesn't look like Golden Axe. It doesn't feel like Golden Axe. Good old Gilius Thunderchud here looks like he eats Xanax-like cereal, and everything feels so awful. Check out the smooth combo. I I don't know what went wrong here, but all of the movement and combo physics are wrong. The attack animations are too long, and you'll get stuck doing the first hit over and over as enemies will body you the second you try to get up. I got stuck in a pattern. I couldn't escape. New to the remake are brief cutscenes at camp or in levels where it'll do a dramatic zoom in on your character with a line of dialogue or two before going back to the same old beat 'em up gameplay. I don't know how this manages to look more lifeless than the 80s arcade game, but they did it. Granted, this is better than the Xbox 360 reboot Beast Rider, but at least that game doesn't claim that it is Golden Axe 1. The running animation is hysterical though. Look at Tyrus go. She's so fast. Earnestly, you could pick up any Sega Ages release, and more than likely it'll feel like a cheap imitation in comparison to the original. Almost like Panzer Dragoon and House of the Dead remake, actually. Sega really needs to drop these super game plans, go steal Vicarious Visions from Blizzard, and have them do a proper remake of every Sega classic I liked growing up. VV Streets of Rage 2, anyone?
Give me what I want. Give me what I want!
Golden Axe 2500 kind of hovers the line between being a remake and a remaster, and oh, there's a lot of those. While the remaster isn't seen in the same light as a remake, I feel like it counts for this conversation. So we might as well talk about a few of those as well. And hey, keeping with Sega for a second, something like Golden Axe is leagues above whatever happened with Sonic 1 on the Game Boy Advance.
You know, while this is technically a port, it might as well be a remake with how wildly incorrect it is. Sonic the Hedgehog for the Game Boy Advance is a rare case of an actual 2 out of 10 title. Just about everything that could go wrong does. The jumping physics are wrong, the speed of movement is chopped in half, the screen size is so small in comparison to the original release that you'll spend a lot of time blindly platforming and squeaking along in an unfun manner. I was never sure if I was gonna make a jump due to how tight everything was. That's not even getting into the music. The Game Boy Advance was not meant for the Sega Genesis sound chip. Sonic 1 here is a bad port of Legend though, and any kid who received this back in the day definitely had a bad Christmas. Considering this came out around the same time as Sonic 06, I think we can all agree that Sonic's 15th year anniversary was a bad time. Play this one if you want to feel nauseous. I'm sure some of y'all do. Another legendary crappy remaster would be the Silent Hill HD collection. What happens when you outsource remasters of 2 of your legendary games to a studio whose biggest title was Karaoke Revolution Glee with incomplete source code? Well, you get a compilation with reviews that really showed who played it and who didn't. 9 out of 10, IGN, baby. Despite missing several titles and calling itself the collection, Silent Hill 2 got absolutely wrecked by visual enhancements, which not only made things darker, but removed a lot of the fog. This not only revealed things not meant for the player to see, but also destroyed the atmosphere of, like, you know, Silent Hill. TLDR, the state of Silent Hill hasn't really changed since 2012. Some might say it's more dire now. Make sure to sign up for the Silent Hill Ascension Battle Pass for your It's Trauma stickers. We can honestly blast through a few of these. The Grand Theft Auto Remastered trilogy was, and still is, an absolute mess. It's packed with bugs and ridiculous glitches that didn't exist in the originals, and they took those off of digital stores. They used AI upscaling and it looks very obvious in certain areas, and the new art direction looks weird as heck in motion. But at least you can do this. Halo Master Chief Collection was a disaster at launch that took several years and tons of patches to become the game that they wanted it to be. If you wanted to play multiplayer, you best it didn't all fall apart. How about Parappa the Rappa Remastered? How about input lag? There's nothing more killer to a rhythm game than input lag. Still not addressed 7 years later, but I gotta believe. Lastly, on remasters and sticking with Sony, I love me some Ape Escape. It's one of my favorite first-party Sony franchises, and I sure would love if they would, you know, like, recognize its existence or something. Well, in 2005, the original would actually receive a port on the PlayStation Portable, and they sure messed it up. Ape Escape on the Loose is what happens when you take a game that was designed for the DualShock controller and smash it onto a handheld with 1 analog stick. Then you gotta reduce the amount of gadgets you can use to 3 from 4 Or, because you got no L2 and R2, bada bing bada boom, you got yourself an inferior version of a 9 out of 10 classic. In the end, it's still Ape Escape, so it's still decent, although the lack of a second analog stick dramatically changes the way it feels. Thankfully, you can play the ported version of the original, but, you know, bring back Ape Escape though.
How about games that were ruined with stupid decisions from publishers? Because we still have so many of those still coming all of the time. We already talked about Warcraft 3 Reforged, forcing you to play that version of the game over the original on Battle.net, but what about something that, you know, changes after release? For instance, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled.
Nitro Fueled was highly regarded when it came out. Heck, I loved it too. It was a wonderful combination Pizza Hut Taco Bell of two classic Crash Bandicoot kart racers, and it felt like a modern game at the same time. It has a lot of content, a lot of costumes, and just about everything someone could want from one of these. All was peachy, until the developer and Activision randomly decided to add microtransactions, despite literally promising that they wouldn't do it. Announced a month and some change after release, boom, microtransactions are coming. You'll now be able to buy Wumpa coins in order to, you know, take a little shortcut on your unlocks. Just hit up the pit stop and do the thing. Listen, I don't mind a game asking for additional currency if it makes sense. These things are difficult and expensive to upkeep in 2023, but going back on your word and adding them into a remake of a kart racer just feels sketchy. It seems like the intrigue of the game and the player base fell off almost immediately with that too, which sucks, because I thought the game was a grand old time. It's certainly better than that Dungeon Keeper remake. Yeah, remember this one?
Developed by Mythic and published by Electronic Arts,
Dungeon Keeper was a gross money-grubbing operation of one of the more beloved PC games from the 90s. It was a simple thing. You are the Dungeon Keeper. You're the evil guy trying to prevent heroes from coming in and stealing your treasure, all with the power of murder. It's a unique real-time strategy game where the sessions usually end in you laughing evilly to yourself while listening to Power Man 5000 or Static X. Well, the developer of the original, Bullfrog, got swallowed up into the EA machine, so they were able to do whatever with the IP, and what they decided on was a mobile freemium remake where you gotta fork over gems for everything. It was egregious, and considering the point of playing this was to go online and challenge other dungeons, it was very obvious when someone opened their or their parents' wallet. There's not much gameplay available to show off because basically no one wanted to play this. Even so, the thing was online all the way till 2022. How? I have no idea. This is what happens when you have an amazing concept, a great IP, and decide to destroy all goodwill for the sake of a few dollars. Lastly, on my dumb publishers part of the video, and something I've actually covered before, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered. Basically, Square Enix took a beloved local co-op action RPG and turned it into a multi-tiered platform with mobile phone online play and a complete inability to play the split screen. This in turn messes with the general flow of the game, as you're intended to do missions and fill out your village with multiple players, but only your character will come home, so unless you plan on running everything several times, you're out of luck. They had the perfect opportunity to make the quintessential couch co-op video game, but squandered it, patched it a few times, and essentially left us with a worse version of the original. Oh, and shared progress? Nope, one player at a time. I was so hyped for this, but 3 years later, the dream is dead, and it hurts just as much. So basically, what I was thinking of is,
Oh, I can't believe you've done this.
It is a shame that decent video games get ruined by totally dumb decisions, but hey, maybe one day I'll finally have a decent version of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered to play that has local multiplayer. I'll catch y'all in another 15 years for that one, but knowing me, it'll probably end up being a grimdark reimagination. Or the Wii version. Ugh. Speaking of, let's talk about the final step of the remake train, the reimagination. This was a trend that really took off in the late 2000s. Some of those games from the 80s and 90s were suddenly not cool enough, and maybe they paid homage, but they changed it for making the kids happy. This can work, but it can also be Flashback 2013.
Flashback: The Quest for Identity probably has no relevance to the younger gaming generation, but to a select amount of older PC and console gamers, it was really cool. Developed by Delphine Software, the people behind other cinematic adventure games like Another World and Fade to Black, as well as Shaq Fu, Flashback is one of the pillars of that genre. Originally for the Amiga before being ported to all the things, Flashback was crazy at the time. You'd go through these big levels screen by screen, looking for items, climbing ledges, and shooting dudes as one Conrad B. Hart. The story is a bit wacky. It deals with aliens and memory erasing Men in Black style, and you're on a mission to, well, mostly run. The world here was vast and memorable at the same time. It had those little rotoscope cinematics that in the 90s were mind-blowing. Yeah, sure, maybe it's just a guy picking up a key card, but for 1992, this was wild. Flash forward to 2013, and the entire state of cinematic platformers is different, or rather gone. Most of the developers responsible for classics like Flashback, Prince of Persia, Blackthorn, Oddworld, and various others have moved on from it or are dead. Ubisoft, who now owns the rights, was approached by Vector Cell, a studio whose only game was Amy, with its whopping 25 on Metacritic, to remake the classic cinematic platformer, and long story short, they messed it up. Considered a reimagining of the original Flashback, I wasn't sure that also meant completely changing the genre and feel of the original into a generic Metroidvania that has the difficulty of a Kirby game. Conrad was now sporting a Nathan Drake cosplay. The gun aiming system is now a full 360-degree thing, so any elements of combat have been oversimplified. Health drops are constant, and you can now just follow a GPS on your screen in order to play your way through the narrative. 3D cutscenes replace the weird vibe of the original. The backgrounds look like copy-paste spaceships as opposed to the grimy feel of 92's world, and it just feels like they didn't understand what made Flashback Flashback. I'm also not really sure why this remake needed a skill system with level ups and character customization, but by God, they did it. Flashback was universally rejected, and I totally understand why. It's just not the same game despite saying it's a remake. It's the difference between looking at Call of Duty and Duty Calls The Calm Before the Storm, and I'm just happy they decided to properly remaster the original a few years later. I think that Flashback is still enjoyable today, this remake is not. Weirdly, there was also a Flashback 2 that recently released that has been received even worse. So it seems like this entire franchise is just cursed. Go play the original. Then you got something like Robin Hood Defender of the Crown. What, you never heard of it? I don't blame you. The original, simply called Defender of the Crown, was an 80s PC strategy game where you do typical 1100s British things. You raid castles, you watch skinny legends waggle their hands, and occasionally die. Also, Robin Hood could appear. Well, in 2003, Capcom, of all publishers, teamed up with the original developer, Cinemaware, to craft out a remake, and what we got was something that was simultaneously too faithful and too different. It kept the same plotting pace of the original 80s title while adding in a handful of mini-games to change the gameplay elements. The added first-person shooting sequences are janky at best, and as a remake, it fails to get to that next level. It's a decent concept that looks nice, just focused on adding the wrong things. I expect more from my Brit Sims.
Which is why we're ending this video with the most British thing possible. When it comes to what people want to see remakes of, there's not many people that top that list more than James Bond. GoldenEye 007, which means yes, my final game of the day is GoldenEye 007 Reloaded, apparently a 9.4 out of 10. Okay.
I don't know why this existed. Well, I mean, I do. It was Activision having the rights to the GoldenEye name and attempting to team up with Nintendo in order to reimagine the third highest selling game on the Nintendo 64. It's a fantastic idea in theory until you realize two things. Number one, it's a Call of Duty clone, and B, it's a Call of Duty clone. Rareware's GoldenEye 007 is the cheesy butt rock version of GoldenEye. You play as Pierce Brosnan shoved onto a rectangle as you become a wild mass murderer. Take that spy out of your name, it's time to shoot everything. The variable difficulties with different objectives added replay value you didn't see much of in the 90s, and it's just a fast-paced, fun time. So let's fast forward to 2011, a year after the Wii original. Because I don't want to pull out my Wii, GoldenEye 007 Reloaded is the same game, now in actual HD. First things first, Daniel Craig in 90s classic GoldenEye sets off my Uncanny Valley sensors, but oh almost immediately the bright fun of GoldenEye is sucked out. On the Nintendo 64, you were tossed into this bright and colorful mountain stage called Dam. Some banging rock music starts up with a synth that I can only describe as spy-y, and you're ready to play however you feel. You boot up the new version and you're greeted with a tutorial, which is fine, I guess. It's when Dam comes back that I'm lost. After a ridiculously long loading screen and showing a similar camera sweep of the Russian mountainside, you're then thrown immediately into the most 2010s Call of Duty intro possible. 006, let's do stealth kills. Let's have a chat, point at things in the distance, and breach through doors in slow motion. Check out the snap zoom.
Double kill. Triple kill.